Hello and welcome to Nut Time. Welcome to the third video in this series where we take a look back at CoD Zombie maps. A quick note before I move on, if this goes as planned, there should be a second gameplay orientated video on Shi No Numa up on the channel, so if that's of any interest it'll be linked at the end and probably down in the description. Previously we had a look at the first ever DLC map, Verrucht, and today we move on to Shi No Numa, the Swamp of Death. Although on screen you will primarily be seeing the remastered Chronicles version, Shi No Numa originally released as part of World at War's second DLC map pack on the 11th of June 2009. Somewhere deep within Japanese territory and surrounded by dense jungle and swampland stand 5 buildings. These wooden structures represent the Rising Sun facility, a base of operations for Division 9. Division 9 were a Japanese research group not too dissimilar to Group 935. Their objective was to study Element 115. Division 9 had set up this facility to investigate the meteor found within the swamp nearby. This meteor contained samples of the renowned Element 115.
I wonder if that rock brought those freak bags.
Wow, it's a rock.
Wow. Although a known quantity today, back in 2009, this was the first the community was hearing of Element 115 and its uses. Something that will be explored more when it comes to the next map in the timeline. Unlike the previous maps before it, as well as the subsequent map after, Shi No Numa's structure wasn't directly lifted from the multiplayer nor campaign. For the first time ever, this was a bespoke Zombies map, albeit with some similar assets to the multiplayer map Knee Deep. As previously mentioned, this map consisted of 5 wooden huts, all connected via marshy swampland. This marked the first time that the players were not confined to a singular building. The largest of the 5 buildings acted as the player's spawn room and the central hub for the map. The other 4 huts were in their own dedicated zones, with a long stretch of land and marshy water separating them and the hub building. They had viable debris and doors in between. Map progression differed from Verrucht, however, where in Verrucht your aim was to buy your way to the power room, where you could spin the box for better weapons and activate the perk machines. In Shi No Numa, there was no power. Everything from traps, perk machines, and even the newly introduced zipline were ready to go from the start. All you needed was points. As mentioned, the perk machines were ready to go from the start and were in each of the 4 huts. However, this time they came with a unique twist. When the player would open the door to the hut, they would often be faced with a random perk. This would often lead to a bit of panic if you got unlucky and Juggernog was the last of your 4 perks. This twist on random perk machine placement allowed for unique experiences every time you load up the map, and it's a feature that will return in a few maps further down the line. The randomised perk system wasn't the only new addition Shi No Numa brought to the mode. Arguably one of its biggest introductions was this.
Oh, dog. There's a zip line. Oh my god, that's exciting.
From this point forward, the concept of a special or boss round would be a mainstay in the mode. Its first iteration, the Hellhound, would appear every 5 or 6 rounds, and this would guarantee a max ammo drop upon completion. I must admit, playing this map back on release when I was only about 11 years old really terrified me. I distinctly remember running around to this corner with a trench gun in hand every time I heard that thunderous sound of the Hellhounds. This game-changing boss round wasn't the only new addition Shi No Numa brought to the table. The Wonderwaff, a brand new wonder weapon to accompany the ray gun. This wacky looking weapon would chain bolts of electricity between zombies, clearing entire waves with one shot.
Oh, not again.
The Flogger, a fan favourite evolution of the trap mechanic, flinging zombies into the air.
Whoa!
The Zipline, a viable method of travel that sounds much more exciting than it actually is. With all the water around the map slowing the player down, this is a great idea, but in practice, not so much. It's slow and costly, and to be honest, very rarely serves a purpose when playing. The zipline wasn't great, but the idea was. A concept that the developers would continue to experiment with and would return in nearly every map moving forward. As mentioned, the zipline was quite situational and acted as a quick escape from the doctor's quarters if you were camping there. Back in the day, I would often pick one of the 4 huts to camp in with 3 or 4 players. Any less and the entry points would become a bit too hard to manage. Camping these huts was often used as a strategy back in the day, before training became much more of a thing. Having only 2 players, however, or even playing solo, meant that these hut strategies were no longer viable. Finding a nice little corner somewhere in the map was always an option, but training was a better alternative. The area between Flogger and the fishing hut was really the go-to training spot. It was probably the most open area of the map with the best spawn points for zombies, and having the Flogger behind you was always a good bonus.
These zombies.
As mentioned, this is the Rising Sun facility, a base of operations for experiments and research of Element 115 by Division 9. However, we don't play as anyone from Division 9. This map is set a while after the site has been abandoned, and we play as 4 new characters. Characters who could make up what we now know as the Ultimates crew. Tank Dempsey, a hot-headed US Marine. Nikolai Belinsky, a drunken Soviet of many wives. Takeo Misaki, a disciplined and honourable Japanese warrior. And finally, Dr. Edward Richthofen, a mad German scientist. Oh, how cliched. Prior to the events of Shi No Numa, Tank, Nikolai and Takeo had been captured by the Nazis and were given to Group 935 to be experimented on with Element 115. At the time, Richthofen was working with Group 935. Tank, one of the 4 Marines sent to rescue Peter McKean at the Verrückt facility, was captured by the Germans after being only one of 2 survivors. Nikolai, a Red Army sergeant, had been captured during the Battle of Stalingrad. And maybe most interestingly, Takeo had been betrayed and handed over to the Germans by the Emperor, who he so dearly dedicated himself to. Prior to this, Takeo was actually sent to oversee operations at the Rising Sun facility. Telling the Emperor the research was unsatisfactory, he was subsequently handed over to Group 935, who Division 9 were working with. Richthofen's backstory is much more convoluted than the rest, something that I may explore further in the next video. For now, all you need to know is that he had experimented on the 3, so much so that their minds were left broken and they had next to no memory of their previous lives. So why are they here at Shi No Numa? With their minds erased, this crazy scientist convinced the rest of the crew to assist him in retrieving his notebook from the zombie-infested swamp. In it lay necessary details for his grand scheme, his ultimate plan to take over the Dark Ether, and to control the zombies and the universe around them. After having put the 3 test subjects to sleep during experimentation, Richthofen finally reawakens them after about a month in October 1945. He takes them to the Rising Sun facility at Shi No Numa. They reclaim his diary and proceed to where the next map is located, near Breslau, Germany, now Poland. Similarly with Verrückt, Shi No Numa's story was revealed much more as time went on, but there are a few Easter eggs in the map for players discovered back in 2009. Peter McKean's hanging body in the spawn room was the most notorious of them. How he got there spawned a lot of theories back in the day, but now we know that he was sent to the facility. However, he died during his jump over the facility, a plot point that would develop in a different manner in a later map. Radios made their first appearance here in Shi No Numa. After holding your interact button, a transmission could be heard. These radios would often be difficult to make out, at times transmission errors excluding vital pieces of information.
115 48 40.
I hope you're receiving this transmission, Peter.
These radios became a recurring feature in many maps to follow, and had snippets of information about the story. The musical Easter egg also would make a return. Interacting with this phone would play The One. Again, writings on the wall would also make a return from Verrückt, a notable one being the word Tunguska, which led to many theories about crashing meteorites and potential future locations. Speaking of meteors, a huge Element 115 rock that had crash landed to Earth can be seen here just outside the map. This is why Division 9 set up the facility, and interacting with it would often cause the characters to quote a line of dialogue.
I wonder if that rock brought those freak bags.
Wow, it's a rock. Wow.
I think that about covers it for Shi No Numa. I actually really like the map. It brings a lot of nostalgia back for me. I played it a lot back during the day. And although it's not the most friendly map due to the traversal and water, I think it often gets forgotten about and is quite overshadowed by Doris. It introduced some great mechanics, such as the first brand new wonder weapon, randomized perks, and a form of travel, and even a boss round. But arguably the most important addition was our beloved 4 original characters. These characters would truly begin the Ether storyline. If you enjoyed, there are other videos in the series, and there's also a Shi No Numa gameplay up, which I would recommend going to watch. It's a bit more lighthearted. So yeah, until the next one, thanks.
These boys.
I was trying to get over to you guys, then got stuck in that doorway where they were all running through.